Welcome to this deep dive into the most challenging area of religious studies, how modern science and historical criticism confront the resurrection, and how Jesus' radical ethical teachings in Luke's Gospel speak to contemporary issues like social justice and pluralism. By the end of this video, you'll be able to critically evaluate scholars like Bultmann and Morison, apply key terms like demythologization and the Beatitudes, and structure top-band exam answers. Here we map the core tensions. On one side, David Hume's scientific argument that miracles are impossible because they break natural laws. On the other, Rudolf Bultmann's historical critical approach that strips away mythology to find the kerygma. In response, apologists like Frank Morison and Ian Wilson argue for the resurrection's historicity. Finally, Jesus' ethical teachings, the Beatitudes and command to love enemies, challenge us to apply these principles today. Open your study notes to these essential definitions. Bultmann's demythologization argues that the resurrection accounts are first-century mythology, but the underlying message, that God acts in Christ, remains true. Contrast this with the Beatitudes from Luke's Sermon on the Plain, where Jesus reverses worldly values by blessing the poor and hungry. And remember the lex talionis, the old law of retaliation is replaced by Jesus' radical command to love your enemies. These ideas are key to exam questions on both historical criticism and ethical living. When tackling exam questions, follow this process. First, identify whether the challenge is scientific, resurrection is impossible, or historical critical, the Gospels are unreliable. Then evaluate the scholar's reasoning. Hume says miracles are inherently improbable, Bultmann says we must demythologize. Next, present counterarguments from apologists like Morison, who examined the evidence as a skeptic and became convinced. Finally, link to ethics, how Jesus' Beatitudes challenge us to care for the poor in today's multicultural society. Let's work through a typical 12-mark question. You need to unpack both parts. For the first claim, explain Bultmann's demythologization, the resurrection is myth, not history. Then bring in Hume's scientific objection. For a counter, use Frank Morison. He set out to disprove the resurrection but concluded it was historically reliable. For the second part, show how Jesus' Beatitudes and command to love enemies are directly applicable to issues like wealth inequality and religious pluralism today. Keep your answer balanced, referencing specific scholars and Bible passages. Watch out for these frequent errors. First, don't muddle the scientific challenge, miracles break laws of nature, with the historical critical challenge, texts are mythological. Second, define demythologization carefully, it's not just removing myth, it's revealing the existential truth. Third, always show how Jesus' ethics apply today. What does blessed are the poor mean in a world of inequality? Finally, impress examiners by quoting specific scholars and chapter and verse citations. Let's bring it all together. You now have a framework to tackle any question on this topic. Remember the three pillars. The scientific challenge forces you to weigh probability against testimony, the historical critical challenge demands you understand demythologization and the search for the historical Jesus, and Jesus' radical ethics, especially the Beatitudes and the command to love your enemies, remain a powerful call to action in our diverse, pluralist world. Keep these key terms and scholars in mind, and you'll excel in your exam.